Welcome back, Collective. Today, we are joined by my very dear friend, Fliria Anderson. Fliria is a technology leader with extensive experience across multiple industries, specializing in IT service management and the ServiceNow platform. Throughout her career, she has helped organizations modernize how technology services are delivered, bringing structure, best practices, and strategic thinking to complex enterprise environments. But beyond her technical expertise, Fleer brings a powerful and deeply personal perspective to today's conversation about code switching in professional spaces. As someone who has often found herself as the only one in the room, Flair has navigated the realities many professionals face when entering environments where the norms and expectations weren't necessarily designed with them in mind. Whew, that's a word, girl. Rather than viewing code switching as surrender or betrayal, she approaches it as a tool, something you can pick up, use strategically, and put down when it no longer serves you. Her perspective explores the real complexity behind that experience, the adaptation required to navigate corporate spaces, the impact that adaptation can have on identity and community, and ultimately the agency individuals can claim in deciding how they show up in the world. Fleer speaks candidly about the balance between authenticity and strategy and how professionals can move through corporate environments with both awareness and intention while still pushing for systems that evolve and become more inclusive. So, we are so excited to have her here today to share her insights on code switching, identity, leadership, and the power of choosing how you show up. Welcome, friend.
Thank you, friend. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. And just so you all know, Flurry and I met. How old is Taylor?
Oh my God, Taylor is 28?
So I'm gonna tell the story how we met.
Okay.
This
God.
is crazy. So we were, but well, she was working at an insurance company that I had recently got hired into, and she was actually on maternity leave when I started. So I took her seat. Did I take your chair or your
You
desk? I
took my
think I took your
chair.
chair.
You took my
I took
chair.
She was like, "Excuse what did you say?" He was like, "Did you take my chair or is that my chair?" Something like that. And I was like,
Yeah. It probably wasn't the best way to meet a new friend.
well, we became friends. Like so much so that I was in her wedding. She was in my wedding. Like she is one of my real friends. We don't talk often, but I do know that I felt like she would be perfect for this conversation because I always say I have a lot of corporate trauma from the place that we worked with because I felt like there were different rules for us than there were for other people.
Mhm.
And I was so young. We were so young. Like nobody knew how to really play the game, right?
Yeah.
My mother worked for like local government. So that's not really corporate. It's like a whole different environment. I didn't know
Mhm.
anybody at that point in my life who worked in corporate to say, this probably isn't appropriate. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was like something that was really new. And I do feel like it was just a different experience for me. So I think that
Mhm.
in that job, I kind of learned to shrink myself and just be quiet.
Mm.
Just be quiet, put your head down and do the work. But that's not enough. It's never enough. It never
Mm.
has been enough. And it won't ever
Yeah.
be enough for us. Like we're always going to
Right.
be required to do a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the code switching came up because Fleur was in town for my birthday, for my 50th birthday. And we were talking, and my husband was like, "What?" And he was like, "Y'all just switching in and out of this." He was like, "One minute y'all like, yo, oh my God." And the next minute y'all like, "I know the hell she." And I was like, "Babe." He was like, "It
Right?
was that extreme." And I was like, "You don't even realize when you're doing it,
Don't
you know,
realize.
because you do it. You do it when you walk into stores." My kids always tease me like, "Oh my God, here come her. Let me speak to the manager voice." She's gonna put on her, "Let me speak to the manager voice." But it's something that we do. But I've even caught them doing it too on the phone. I'm like, "I know you're not on the phone. I'll
Right.
switch you."
Right. Why you judging me?
Judging me. You over here doing the same thing, doing the exact same thing. So I want to give
Right.
you an opportunity to speak before we kind of really dig in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, totally come from similar situations, right? Similar environments. Parents were more blue collar workers,
Mhm.
didn't necessarily understand how corporate professionalism different or didn't necessarily align with what we were taught, growing up. I think for a lot of us, especially, Black professionals, a lot of our history is based and rooted in survival, not
Mm,
necessarily, right, this is how you need to act in a professional environment. It's, how do you pay the bills? How do you feed the family? So our
mhm.
conversations at the dinner table is more around how we're gonna feed our kids and not necessarily around strategy, right? Not
Right.
necessarily around business, right? So a lot of us come from that. So when you transition into corporate in these professional settings, it's a whole nother world.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
there's benefit to it, right? Like, there is
absolutely.
benefit to it
Mhm.
because before I got this promotion, do you remember I called you and I was like, "I just can't do it. I don't know how do you do this? I don't want to tell
Yeah.
people about my I don't wanna talk about that." I don't
Yeah,
wanna
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about it. And we stayed on the phone for a minute, and you gave me so much good, just sound advice.
Mhm.
Like you were saying, you're just selecting what you're saying. Like, you're not saying
Mhm.
anything, you're not being any way that you're not. You're just being
Mhm.
selective with what you share, and just enough to make
Absolutely.
people feel comfortable because they people are very uncomfortable at
Mhm.
times
Yeah, they can
with
be intimidated for sure. Yep. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
and it's how we not just survive, but how we thrive in
And how we
the work.
thrive. Yeah.
Because you can get by without doing any switching, right? You can get
Mhm.
by, but you may not necessarily get promoted. You may get overlooked, or you may
Absolutely.
not people won't know what you know because you're
Mhm.
not comfortable sharing it in a way that's palatable for other
Yeah.
people. Does that make
Completely
sense?
agree. I tell folks you choose where you wanna be, but if you're looking to advance in your career, it requires a different skill set, and that skill set includes how you show up in different environments. I think about a situation where this was before our insurance job, right? I was working for this call center and I was probably like 18, 19 years old, and I had aspirations of being a trainer for this call center. And so my boss at the time, a Black female, I think she's the only Black female boss I've ever had in my career.
Wow.
She gave me the opportunity, right? And she was like, yeah, I'm going to assign you, you're going to go and train this class. And I was ready, like, I knew all my stuff. Listen, I laid out my outfit the night before, but let me tell you what my outfit was when I walked up in that training class. Now remember, I was 18, 19, so this was, like, late girl, I had on a red, white, and blue Carl Kanai shirt. I had on some red denim Carl Kanai shorts, right? Some Nike socks, right? But it was a call center. Right, it was a call center. We were used to coming in there with
Mhm,
denim and T-shirts, sometimes ball caps and gym shoes,
mhm,
right? So I'm like, "Okay, well, this is the way I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna train the team," right? The new hires that are coming
mhm.
in to this organization. When I tell you I thought I did a phenomenal job on that training, right? Immediately after that training, my boss pulled me aside and she said, "You need to change the way you show up in this position."
Mm.
You dress for the job that you want, not for
Right.
the job that you have.
Yeah.
And I think that was my first, like, introduction into have to show up differently depending on the role that you want,
Mhm.
not the role that you've been in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
when I think about code switching and I really wanna talk about, like, reframing code switching, because
Mhm.
sometimes I think it gets a negative connotation, I think about how do you need to act or how do you need to be effective and to get your point across and be respected in environments that weren't necessarily built for you,
Oof.
right? So, how do you do that? And it may mean changing the way you dress, right? Coming from Carl Kanai, right? That was the big thing on the streets. That was
Mhm.
the big thing in the urban community. But
Yeah,
if
but
I'm
not
coming into a professional setting, I may need to look different.
mhm.
I may need to speak a little differently. I may need to dress different, but it doesn't mean that I'm being fake right? It doesn't mean that I'm selling out. It doesn't mean that I'm going to lose myself. And, I've had those moments and we can kind of talk about that, but it just means that I'm adjusting for the environment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's good, friend. That's good. And I think that even like in tech, right? Like you see people, like for instance, where I work, people wear jeans and suits and tennis shoes. There are even people with piercings and
Mm,
colorful hair, but I know that I could not show up in
yeah.
that way. I could not show up that way and be taken seriously. And
Yeah.
even like to keep it honest, I always tell people that I have had more trajectory in my career over the last 3 years than I have in the last 11 years I worked at this company.
Hmm.
Now, very little I've changed, but if we can be honest, the most notable changes, I've lost a significant amount of weight. So that's also something like overweight people are invisible. Overweight Black women, especially, I think, are invisible. For me, that was my experience, in the workplace.
Hmm.
Like, when you show up and you look a little bit differently, people kind of treat you differently as well. So there's a
Hmm.
certain level of privilege that comes with being smaller too. Like, with being, because
Yeah.
I dress the same, I still know I can wear a denim shirt, but I'm gonna have on some slacks and a cute pair of shoes. I may have on
Hmm.
some little heels or something. I cannot walk into my job with tennis shoes on. I just can't. I can't wear
Yeah.
sweatpants. I can't wear jeans with holes in them, or I can't
Hmm.
have purple hair and
Hmm.
piercings. Like, I
Oh,
can't do all of that. I would not be taken seriously.
absolutely. And I completely agree. I was watching something, I can't remember the lady's name, but it's evident in the data that, more attractive people earn more money,
Mhm,
right? It's clear in the data. And then
mhm.
in our environment, right, in these United States of America, right, thinner is, perceived as more attractive,
Yep.
right? Certain hairstyles are
Mhm.
considered more attractive and more palatable, right?
Yep.
So you think about those things when you're going into these corporate environments, and you know, um, it's not necessarily again about changing who you are internally. It's more just adopting or adapting for the environment that you're working in. Right. Yeah. So I think as Black professionals, it's really about how you present yourself,
Mhm.
even down to how you manage your emotions. Right. So Black professionals, like, often, we feel pressure to edit everything from our tone to our body language, our hairstyle, our humor, all to fit into these frameworks again that just weren't built for us. And it can be mentally exhausting because you're constantly weighing how others perceive you, right? And those are some of the challenges, and those are some of the things that we have to navigate as professionals in corporate.
Mm. So how do you? Because like one of the I have a mentor who's younger than me. I always say that her career is older than mine. So she kind
Mm,
of mentors me. So she said to me one day, she said, it's like, she was like, the way that I look at it is when I pull into the parking garage, I just put my mask on that I wear to work. I have a work
mm,
mask. She was like, "So
mhm,
I put my mask on that I wear to work, and it's not a lot different. It's not very different from my face, but on my mask, it shows what I'm revealing. I'm choosing what I reveal, and it's along the same lines of
yeah,
what you said." So she said, "You
yeah,
just have to create your mask, figure out what you're comfortable sharing, and then share that."
mhm.
Because I don't like to small. It takes a lot to get to know me
I know,
personally, and
right?
people at work
Yeah,
don't really know me, right? But people
yeah.
like to feel like they know you in order to be comfortable with you, right? At
Mhm.
my company, they always say you have to show up as your most authentic self, and I'm like, "Y'all don't I'm a Black you don't want me to show up as that's not for me.
Yeah,
Like, you
and
don't
I
want me to
always
be my most authentic self."
absolutely, and I challenge that, right? When, these companies tell us to show up as our most authentic selves, to me, that's show up as your most authentic professional self.
Mm. Mm.
It doesn't mean necessarily, bring your entire culture into corporate.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, and I see people kind of get hung up on this when they say, well, they said bring your authentic self to work, right? But let's be clear, they really mean bring your authentic professional self to
Mhm.
work, right? And when I think about like the mask, right, I agree, right? It's more about strategic fluency.
Mhm.
And it's the ability to move between those different environments and culture. And you're not by putting on, the quote unquote mask, you're not really losing yourself. But I think again, it's a sophisticated skill set, kind of like being multilingual. You don't
Mhm.
forget your first language, you just add another.
Mm.
So today in environments, like if I adjust my tone or my language or my approach to something, it's not to make others feel comfortable or to be more palatable at the expense of myself. It's because I understand the environment and I'm making a selective choice to navigate it effectively.
Mhm. Nice. Strategic fluency. I love it.
Yeah, so
I
the
love
key
it.
shift is in the past, like I'm no longer necessarily code switching for acceptance or for survival. I'm adapting for the effectiveness without necessarily disconnecting from who I am. Like I've got stories where, earlier in my professional career, right, I had a white male manager literally tell me, be careful who I surround myself with if I want to advance my career. And
Wow.
ultimately what he was saying is stay away from these black women
Oh my god.
in our
What?
office. But here's the deal. Early in your career, you're trying to figure it out and you're like, okay, if I want to advance, these are some of the things that I need to do. I found myself eating alone because they weren't eating with me. They weren't having
Mhm.
lunch with me. Doing things, coming into work, just working, keeping my head down, keeping quiet, right? Doing all those things just to kind of get my job done. But I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel safe and I didn't feel valued,
Mhm.
right? So I struggled in that space. I struggled with that quote unquote leader because ultimately he was telling me to disconnect from who I was, who
Mhm.
I came from, and where I felt safe to fit into this culture,
That
right? So
wasn't accepting of you. Like, you he wanted you to fit into a culture that was they
that
were not
wasn't,
gonna accept
they
you.
weren't going to accept me, right? But then you're also telling me don't be around the people that do accept you, the
That
people
you
that do see you, the people that do value you, the people that do
Mhm.
make you feel safe while you're here if you want to
Wow.
advance your career. So these are you've got kind of the unsaids or the words that aren't necessarily spoken. He was pretty direct,
Yeah.
but we're dealing with all of the unconscious bias that's also happening in
Yeah.
corporate,
Absolutely.
right? And then just the actions of some of the quote unquote leaders that let you know that you need to act and move a little differently in this space.
Hmm. That is good. That is good. So how did you end up so was this a company because I think this is something that we've spoken about personally as
Mhm,
well, is recognizing when you get to a point where you realize there's no more opportunity for you. Like, have you
mhm,
ever been in a place where you've been able to switch it? Have you like, where you like, "Well, there's no more opportunity here, so I'm gonna try something different. I'm gonna try
mhm,
something without leaving the company," right? Like, say, if
mhm,
you're not in a position where you wanna leave, you just wanna try something different to see if
mhm.
there's a way that you can kind of, move your path forward a little bit. Like, have you ever had a situation like that? Like, have you ever used any of these tactics in your current or former position that helped you to get where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So relationships are critical,
Mhm,
right? It's establishing relationships internally, right? So at the organization that you're in, but also externally,
mhm,
right? So when you do come to a point where, if your driver is money, let's just say you're not earning able to earn more money or you're not learning, right? Maybe you're at a crossroads where maybe you need to pivot. Maybe you need to think about doing something different and leveraging those relationships, I think help get you to that point, right? So there have been multiple times in my career. I've mostly been in the IT service management space, but there are so many things that you can do in that space right?
Mhm.
You can lead people, you can lead the product, you can be a process engineer, you can be a consultant. There's so many opportunities within that space. So I think it's really about being creative, understanding your skill set, and ultimately what drives you. If it's the
Mhm.
money, then maybe you need to go in this direction. If it's
Mhm.
fulfillment, maybe it's another direction. So leveraging those relationships and leveraging them before you need them, right? So I mentor a lot of younger folks, right? And, some people come to me when they need a job, or
Mhm.
some people come to me when, hey, I really need some help. I think it's those ongoing relationships and establishing, regular connects with folks to say, hey, here's some things that I'm thinking about, so that when the time does come, and it will come,
Yeah.
right, where you need to kind of lean on those relationships and their connections possibly to get you to a different level or
Mhm.
into another role, right? You want to make sure that you're using that. So yeah, multiple times in my career, I pride myself on having a good internal and external network.
Mm.
And it's not just when I need them. It's, hey, let's have ongoing conversations. And these are people that I trust,
Yeah.
right? People that I can have conversations with about work, about family, about
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
right? And really leveraging that.
That's great. So when you speak about leadership, because so I know you personally, right? But I'm still going to ask this question. So when you look at leadership and when you look at mentoring other people, how do you, and also like a side part, do you find that most of the people that you end up mentoring are young, Black, or color, people of color professionals? And then how do you introduce the, being your best, showing up as your best professional self in the conversation? Is that something that you lead with? Or like, where does it have a role in your mentoring?
Yeah, it absolutely does. So there was a situation, I would say it wasn't even 6 months ago, um, where I was at the office working a little later than usual. And so I stepped on the elevator, and a young Black lady stepped on the elevator with me. And I've never seen this young lady in my
Mhm.
life, right? I've been with the company for a long time. She's only been there for about a year. And we stepped on the elevator together, getting ready to go home. And she stops me and asks me, how long I've been with the organization. And she just started going into some of the challenges that she's facing. And literally, she was in tears. And I still kind of get emotional about it because some of the
Yeah.
things that she revealed, I remember being that girl.
Wow.
Right, how she was being treated, how she was undervalued, how she was, being how they spoke to her, or her manager at the time spoke to her. So, we stopped on the 3rd floor. I'm like, "Let's just get off the elevator."
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Stopped on the 3rd floor, got off the elevator, went into a conference room, and I let her just explain everything that was going on. And honestly, I was there to listen, but also with my experience and my background, and again, being that girl before, right? I felt like it was, kind of like divine intervention that I stayed and worked late that night, that I got on the elevator with her, and we had this conversation. But what I told her was, it is different for us, right? There are going to be things that we have to navigate that comes naturally for someone else, right? Someone that may not look like us. We had the conversation about showing up as your most professional and, your most professional, authentic self. And she was well put together, well spoken, right? All of the things that you would think corporate would value and
Mhm.
appreciate, other than the skin that she was wrapped in.
Right.
Right. So we had the conversation around, hey, maybe try this with your manager. So, for example, she was preparing to take a certification that was required to keep her job. And she said that she would be in situations where she would try to study and train with her, at that time, manager. And he would laugh at her when she would get an answer wrong. And I
Wow.
asked her, "Well, how do you respond to that?" Right? And she said she would shrink herself, she would feel embarrassed, and she wouldn't say much. I said, "The next time he does that, ask him, 'Why are you laughing?'"
Mhm.
Turn the tables,
Yeah.
right? Because that's completely unprofessional, right? So she started to apply some of these, strategies on, "Hey, you're laughing at me, and you know that this is a required certification to keep my job. Help me understand why you're laughing." And whatever he says, let him know that you don't appreciate that,
Mhm.
and going forward, you'd ask him to stop,
Wow.
right? So it's about being assertive when you need to. And honestly, early in my corporate career, I don't know if I would have felt comfortable, but nobody was ever there to tell me that this is okay,
Yeah.
right? So when I think about mentoring people, and yes, of course, most of the folks that I mentor are younger, they're Black, both female and male,
Mhm.
right? But it's because of they feel connected,
Yeah.
right? They feel like we have things in common,
Yeah.
which is why they reach out, right?
Yeah.
So, not that I wouldn't mentor anyone else in leadership, but I think that's the demographic that feels more comfortable with me. They can relate.
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's huge. And even I mean, because it's I don't wanna call it code switching because we need to
Mhm,
rename it. So whatever we're renaming it to,
mhm,
when you think about because I think that you kind of get like, corporate in the '90s is different than it is now because in the
mhm,
'90s, I felt like, there was this whole thing with and it's probably still there now, the aggressive Black woman or you can't speak too harshly, you can't speak up too much
mhm,
because then you're the angry Black woman or you're combative, right? So how do you navigate in those situations? But is that a part of showing up as your most professional self? Is it the tone and the change in language that makes it not seem as aggressive previously? Because I know that I can speak very softly and people always think I'm really nice. But then when I have to be firm, I think that it's so different now than it was 25 or 30 years ago because I've learned to adjust. But I do still think sometimes people are like, oh, that lady, Diane Hawkins is something else, you
mhm.
know?
Yeah, the same, right? It's situational awareness.
Yeah.
Right, certain situations call for you to kinda tone it down a bit, right? But other situations call for you to, assert yourself
Mhm.
and let people know that, Listen, I mean business."
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't mean that you need to raise your voice, or even though when we just assert, a certain tone, they may consider that as being aggressive and raising your voice, right? I was
Yeah.
watching something the other day on CNN, and it kind of caught me. They were just having a debate, right? It was a Black woman and of course a white man. And
Group chat. Were you
the
watching the group chat?
man, say that again?
Were you watching the group chat? Once
Was it? No, I wasn't watching. No,
okay.
I don't think it was a group chat. It was something later on. But, the guy she was just talking with her regular tone,
Mhm.
right? And some of us have deeper voices. I have a deeper voice,
Mhm.
right? And, it caught me because he was like, "Why are you," something like, "Why are you so angry?" or "Why are you yelling?" And it was clear to me that she wasn't yelling. She was
Oof.
just speaking with her normal tone.
Mhm.
But these are things that we still have to navigate
Yeah.
as Black women in professional environments,
Yeah.
right? A lot of times, it's expected that we need to be soft, and we need to kind of scale back what we say and when we assert ourselves. And sometimes we do. Again, it's about situational awareness, navigating the room, understanding our audience,
Mhm.
right? But it should not come as a consequence of showing up as who you are.
Friend, that's good. That's good, and it's interesting to particularly, a lot of my peers work offshore. So I have peers in different places in India and the
Mhm,
Philippines, and there are cultural components there as well, that I
Yeah.
often find myself having to deal with. And
Mhm.
I think that I'm taking a course now on Coursera for cross-cultural leadership, a cross-cultural leadership course
Yeah.
because for me, and I don't know if it's because I'm the only woman of color. I'm the only Black woman, not the only woman of color in our
Mhm.
org. I'm the only Black woman.
Mhm.
So I think that I get a lot of pushback perhaps that my counterparts don't get, right?
Mhm.
So I'm learning to navigate those waters professionally, right?
Yeah.
Because as we become more global, as we start to work, because work is global now. Like we work with people all over the globe. So in addition to being the Black woman in white spaces, you have to look at being the Black woman in Asian spaces and all other kind of things. And that brings another type of culture where,
Mhm.
in the society historically where women have been considered to be in a lower position than men, and then you have this
Mhm.
Black woman that you're reporting to,
Mhm.
you know, and it's incredibly challenging. So
It is.
have you had those experiences, and how have you managed to navigate them? Because what does code switching look like in a place where perhaps people don't adhere to the same code? Like, that's a whole whole 'nother type of code.
That's a whole and again, it's like it's cultural fluency. So
Oh,
I'm in technology. I work with a lot of, males. I work with a lot of Indians, right? And their culture is different, right? They got
they
this whole caste system,
they do,
right?
still today.
And still today, right? And those cultures are helping to influence technology environments,
Mhm.
right? Who they hire, who
Yeah.
they promote. All of those things are influenced by how they were raised and how they were brought up in their culture, right? And it's not everybody, but I think you have to be aware of these systems and how it's impacting you
Mhm.
or how it could potentially affect you as you try to climb the corporate ladder if that's what you're
Mhm.
interested in. Or how they acknowledge you. Like I've had situations where um I would be walking into an elevator or trying to get into an elevator. They would close the door on me. They didn't wanna ride in the elevator with me.
What? It's not even about race because some of them are darker than us.
A lot of them
That's
are.
the killer. That's the
A lot of
killer.
them are.
That's the
A lot of
killer.
them are. Right? They would close the elevator door on me. They didn't wanna ride in the elevator with me. I would go into meetings, and it was clear that I was the leader of this space, and they would not acknowledge me. They would they would acknowledge somebody on my team before they would acknowledge me. And again, it's not all of, the Indian culture or, the Asian
Right.
culture or, um, you know, eh, the white culture, if I could
Right.
say that.
Right.
Because I have had a lot of, especially white males that have
Mhm.
helped me get to the next level more than anybody, right? So I will say
Absolutely.
that, right?
100%.
Um, so it's not everybody, but I've experienced that. And I know I'm not the only Black professional who has experienced that. So for us, that's disrespectful.
So disrespectful.
And trying to navigate that can be especially difficult. But again, it goes back to the emotional control.
Mhm.
No matter what's happening, right? You're speaking with authority. And in those situations, my tone does change.
Mhm.
I'm not as soft, right? I'm here to accomplish a job. We've got outcomes and deliverables. And if you're a part of my team or if you're a part of delivering those outcomes, I need to, you need to get on board
Mhm.
or I need to find somebody else to replace you.
Wow. It's just that simple. Absolutely. Wow. So when you look at the stress of it all, right? Like when you look at the, like you said, it's cultural fluency, it's being strategic and knowing your audience, how do you prevent this from impacting who you are? Because I know when I leave work, I'm exhausted. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I really do feel like I've been performing, and even though I'm still myself, it is exhausting. Like on my way home when I'm in Austin, don't even call me. I'll call you when I get back to the
What?
apartment because I just need to decompress. Because it's been a time, like it's how do you keep from allowing it to impact you emotionally
Yeah, so I
because it can
think
be stressful.
oh my goodness, it's draining,
Mhm.
right? It is absolutely it can be exhausting, and for many years, I felt the same way. I felt like I was performing a version of myself that I hadn't been raised to be, and I just naturally didn't identify with, right? So it almost created a kind of internal dissonance, like
Mhm.
I was constantly editing myself in real
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
right? And a
Yeah.
big
That's
part of
what
that,
it is.
it comes from the environment. We're trying to fit into spaces that, again, we don't feel safe, seen, or valued. So the code switching wasn't about the communication style, like, it's more about seeking that validation and that acceptance, but I think over time, my relationship changed with it. So as I grew more confident in my skills, my perspective shifted. The opinions of others, especially those who don't necessarily recognize your value, I start to care less about them, right? It
Mhm.
starts to carry less weight. So I think that helps to reduce that emotional pressure around quote unquote code switching. So I didn't necessarily stop being adaptable. I just became more intentional. Now I think of it less as changing who I am and letting it
Mhm.
drain me as much, but more around, how do you read the room? How do you show up? And I think that's the big difference. It's really about our perspective, right? Again, like your friend talked about putting on the mask. When you
Yeah.
leave work, take the mask off, right?
Mm.
You put on this one face and we wear multiple hats all the time.
Yeah.
It's just like taking off that hat and again, right? It's a tool, it's a skill set that we use when we need it and we leave it alone when we don't, right? We put it to the side. Make sure that you're constantly doing things to fulfill you
Mhm.
and filling your cup up, right? Because the world, not just corporate, right? They're always taking from your cup. They're always taking from our cup. How are you intentional about filling your own cup up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the perceptions and the perspectives of others don't matter as much anymore,
Mm.
especially when you know that you're good at your job. You know that you're good at this particular skill that you've developed. You know that you're a good leader. You know that you're a good person.
Mhm.
Their opinions don't matter.
Wow. Friend, you are amazing. We are at time. I said I'm gonna respect your time. We
Oh
are
my
at
goodness.
So I was poking around and I saw, and I can edit this out. I saw
Okay.
an Instagram page that you had created
With 2 posts?
2 posts. So, do you wanna talk about that a little bit? Because I think that would be a great space for you. Because I feel like you've done some corporate counseling, or what do you call it? What do you call it? It is because you've definitely done some mentoring for me even so much as starting a meeting with saying good morning to people instead of jumping right to it, or
Oh, yeah,
even just
yeah, yeah.
asking someone, "How was your day? How was your weekend?" Or because Imma
Yeah,
get right to it. Let's get this taken care
yeah,
of so I can go on to the next task. But even taking a moment to humanize everyone in the room has worked
everyone in
wonders
the room, right?
when I'm leading
And
the
that
kickoff.
was a change for me, right, coming from Ohio, moving to the South. I think, coming from the Midwest, we were, let's get right
Let's
down to
go.
business, right? I don't really care about your mama, your papa, I
Yeah,
don't care about none of that.
it worked.
Right?
Yeah.
It's let's get down to business. So that significantly changed for me when I moved from Midwest to the South, right? I
Mhm,
recognize that people want to feel like you are invested in them
mhm.
personally and
Yep.
professionally. So, that entire shift. So Grace and Grit Leadership is probably
Mhm.
the Instagram
Yes, it is.
post that you saw. So at one time, I was heavily interested in like creating my own kind of leadership circle and kind of giving like my own take on corporate and really focused on, the non-dominant people
Yeah.
in corporate and how to navigate some of these things. So I created 2 posts and I never went back. So I don't know how.
I was like, "What in the world?"
So I don't know, what do you wanna say about it?
Is it something that you think you'll revisit? Because I think that's a great space for you. Because,
Um,
like, let's be honest, we may have another 15 years in the workforce,
yeah,
and it is rapidly evolving, not necessarily in the best ways for us, because they're saying that Black women are being forced out of
out of the
these
workforce, yeah.
positions that we've worked so hard to get. So I think that
Mhm,
it'll be a great way to kinda cement your legacy and then prepare these kids who are coming into it, because I think we have an advantage that our parents did not have, because our generation was able to enter spaces that were
mhm.
close to
Yeah,
theirs. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? So I think that we have you friend, like, you have a unique opportunity there. And like I said, just what you shared with me during that conversation kinda helped pivot things for me completely. Like, it was literally, like, helped me, like, really kind of hone in on what I needed to do in order to
mhm,
get to that next level. So I think it's
yeah.
something that you should consider.
Okay, I will.
Okay. Do you have any closing words? Anything that you wanna leave our listeners with?
Yeah, so I just, want everyone to know who is trying to navigate these corporate spaces. A lot of us would consider ourselves as being fake when we're going into these environments, right? I would strongly encourage you to not consider yourself as being fake. It's just part of who you are, and it's a necessity in order for you to get to the next level or to enter spaces that we aren't traditionally represented.
Absolutely.
So again, let's try to reframe code switching as more as cultural fluency.
Mhm.
And how do we read the room? How do we navigate the room without necessarily losing who we are?
Awesome. Well, we are at time. Thank you for being here,
Thank
Fliria.
you for having
It
me.
was wonderful to have you here. I hope that we can have you back
Yes.
again, because I think this conversation, um, I think we could have some more input, some more voices here.
Yeah, yeah, more input, and I think we cover topics that we could absolutely go deeper into.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely. For
absolutely.
sure, a lot deeper.
Yes.
So, I look forward to hopefully having you back. Thank you for saying yes, because I
Yeah,
did not think my friend was like, "What
thank
is
you for
this
asking
about?"
me.
She was like, "What is this going to be about?" It was so funny, but okay, collective, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Floria, I'm going to, if it's okay with you, I'm going to put the Grace and Grit Instagram page on it
Okay,
so people
sounds
can take
good.
a look at your posts, since you may be posting more,
I will
right?
be.
Bye, collective. Thank you.
Alright.